It is 3:31 p.m. It is March 19th, 2025. I'm calling to order the Public Infrastructure and Utilities Committee. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Balmer, Alderwoman Keys, Alderwoman Velazquez,
Present.
Vice Chair Browning,
Present.
Chair Schweitzer,
Present.
Alderman Balmer, Alderwoman Keys. We have three present. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. A quorum being present, we will move on to item number 3 on the agenda, approval of the minutes. I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of Wednesday, January 29th, 2025.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved by the Alderwoman from the 6th, seconded by the Alderman from the 9th. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Balmer, Alderwoman Keys, Alderwoman Velazquez,
Aye.
Vice Chair Browning,
Aye.
Chair Schweitzer,
Aye.
Alderman Balmer, Alderwoman Keys. We have three aye votes.
Thank you. With that, you've sustained the motion from the Alderman from the 6th and approved the minutes from January 29th, 2025. We have no board bills to review or resolutions to review. The entire purpose of this committee meeting is to hear an update from the Streets Department on the utility coordination policy that is now in ordinance and being worked through in the Streets Department to implement. So without any further ado, thank you so much, Director Williams, for being here and presenting to us. The presentation's pulled up and you're ready to take it away.
All righty. Well, thank you so much, Alderwoman, and to the committee. One, for allowing me to do this virtually. As it's public knowledge now, I've had a recent procedure and this is my first full week back in the office, and standing is just not in my cards right now for a long period of time. So thank you for pivoting so that we're still able to share this information with you. What we're going to talk about today is just give an overview of what we have done and what our plans are to do, as well as kind of expand on some of the sections that are called out in the ordinance 71943. So today with me, before I jump to that, I have two that will really be leading portions of what this ordinance outlines, and that is the utility coordination and planning when it pertains to pavement, as well as talk through how utility coordinations will work with our 50/50 sidewalk program. So we have Kent Flake, Commissioner of Streets, here, as well as Zachary Fortune, who runs our 50/50 sidewalk program, and they will go into some details of what we're doing as how we identify our work that we do for both of those programs. But I will start off with just go through the coordination first. First thing that when you look at this, it's a lot in this ordinance that we have to do internally as well as with our utility companies. One, when I speak of internally, with the inspection staff that we have, as well as working with BPS and our staff here at the Streets Department to make sure that we're all on the same page, and how we inspect and how we do the business has been approved, and it all has been updated. We have a number of new inspectors here, as well as old inspectors, but this is something new for us, or in some cases can be new for an inspector that has been here within the last few years and may not be aware totally of what this ordinance speaks to. So we are looking to do continuous training of our inspectors, as well as doing training with the sewer lateral contractors, as well as updating the checklist that we will utilize internally, as well as share with our utility partners in the field, so they know what we're looking for when we come out to do inspections of this type of work. Communications that we've done. We have sent the letter out to utility providers. And that letter, to some degree, speaks to what we're looking at immediate changes that we're making. And one of the things was asphalt patching around steel plates, as well as making sure that when they're cutting into pavement, that they are filling it back. They're responsible for doing that work now. So we outlined that in the permit or in the letter, as well as pointing out to them some of the other key factors of the ordinance and giving them information on the ordinance. The third major thing that will be effective immediately is the moratorium for a 5-year period. And so we'll discuss a little later in the PowerPoint how we plan to do that moratorium. But these are things that were outlined with the contractor. We do have quarterly meetings. I'm not for sure, Alderwoman, if you were ever invited, but we will make sure that our utility coordination meetings that we have had them in the past, but and they're mainly on a quarterly basis with all of our utility providers to the city of St. Louis. The second quarter meeting will be in May, and this is where we will talk through, what they're seeing, what we need from them, making sure they're able to provide that level of information to us, and we're all on the same page and everyone understands. Also, we have added to the link to the permit, we have the specification of what's expected when they are doing this work out in the field. That was one thing that we were able to work with ITS to get that updated to the permit. So now we don't have to worry about them saying we don't know. We have shared that information with them up front, and every permit that they pull for excavation work, it will be included in the permit. So now I want to kind of talk through a implementation of developing a utility plan. These are some of the things that we've done and actions that we've put dates to, that we will continue to move forward in developing a utility plan. That was one of the main pieces of this was, what are we doing? How do we know a plan? Not only we're expecting plans from our contractor or our utility providers, but the city of St. Louis should have some level of plan as well. And so like I said, we've established an email that they will use for the city of St. Louis, all of our utility providers. This is where they will provide their utility plans. As you can see, June of 2024, when we first start asking for utility plans from our providers, and they share them directly to that email. What we are finding that some of these companies, they're just not able to readily share information for legal reasons. And so we're working with them to, what can you share with us as we develop a utility coordination plan for the city of St. Louis? We asked once again this year for additional funding to put a paving line in the streets department budget. Currently, we do not have a line item that is designated just for paving in the streets department budget. So this year, same as we did last year, trying to be proactive, one, for how we service the city of St. Louis as it pertains to paving, as well as how do we look forward to the move to a Department of Transportation for the city of St. Louis. We did implement, or we put that proposal in with the hope that we will get something on the back end this year from the budget process and the budget committee. The letter was sent to the utility providers this month, as well as our next coordination meeting is May of 2025. And we will have, we don't know what the budget will bring us, but what we do know is the current standard of how we do business is the alders, they identify funds utilizing ward capital or either St. Louis Works. So in May of 2025, we will be active and ready with lists to provide, lists that we can provide to alders so that they can make those selections of streets that they would like to pave moving forward. This is the GIS map. I wanted to give a idea of what it will cost us for one time to implement a GIS map, just to overlay the base knowledge of a utility plan across the city of St. Louis, as well as what it will cost us ongoing, $40,000 ongoing labor costs to keep this plan going. We would need to hire a GIS specialist in our department that will run and facilitate this on a daily basis for the department. And currently, it was removed from our budget, but we have asked for at least one of those two positions to be added back in FY26 so that they will be responsible for maintaining and updating this information for the streets department. Now, enough for me. I am going to turn it over to Kent Flake to talk about our citywide paving plan. But before he gets started, I want to kind of highlight, I have 2 slides, sorry. Kent's not quite yet, in 2 slides, then he'll be up. But wanted to highlight high level some of the things that we have with when it comes to a paving plan. Paving is determined by the Board of Alders through Ward Capital or either St. Louis Works funds that they're able to provide funding for paving. As I stated before, we do not have a budgeted line item in the streets department for paving, but we have continuously asked for that. And these are some of the challenges that we face when looking at how to be proactive with creating a paving plan. If we got to the point, and it is my hope that we will get to the point as a city where we could put more funding into a paving plan, then we will be able to be more proactive in our paving operations and how we plan for 5 and 10 years paving our city across, well, really across the entire city, and not based off of request or the selection of alders. I wanted to talk about what we are currently paving in the city. We have the 5 major arterials that were funded through ARPA, as well as some additional funding has been added to this. One of the things I want to highlight and talk about is we are looking at this work is being done by a contractor, and for multiple reasons. We talk about staffing issues that we've had in the streets department. We talk about the skill set. We talk about the travel times and all of that across the city. Safety of our employees is very important. And so these are all projects that have been outsourced through ARPA funds and other funding sources that you will see these projects that will, as Kings Highway has already started, these projects will be in effect using ARPA dollars. Now I will turn it over to Kent. Oh, I said I was gonna move. Not here. He's taller than me.
All right, so my portion of this is going to be fairly simple. Most of the board, or all of the board, should be familiar with these
Mr.
sheets.
Flake, could you provide your name and position
Oh.
title for the record?
Yes, I'm Kent Flake, Commissioner of Streets. And good afternoon, all. So what we're seeing here is essentially the paving proposal list that each alderman sees. Some lists are much more comprehensive than others. Most of those are based on, or they're all based essentially at this point on a request, either request by residents, request by alders, or possibly even businesses. The first one we have here is Ward 1. Just to explain this a little bit, the color coding on here, the green means that it is to be paved. The yellow means there's a hold for some reason. In this case, the South Broadway is on hold because Board of Public Service is doing a lot of work on that as far as traffic calming and some other things. So Obviously, I don't want my teams out there to go accidentally pave South Broadway before Board of Public Service work's done. So we keep that in yellow on all of our internal list with hold written out to the sides, so just to keep it simple for everybody here, because this list isn't only for alders or the public, it is also for our crews to use, so then they can keep up with the actual knowledge going on. So each alder gets, this is typically shown as one list. For presentation purposes, it's two. So we have a list, this is the to-do list, and this is the was not funded list. Was not funded, it brings up several different points. As you can see by the first list, there's quite a bit of paving on that list. The alders dollars are not infinite. I am very well aware of that, as well as the public should be very well aware of that. It'd be nice if they were endless pots of gold, but they are not. So this is what was funded in Ward 1. This is what was not funded in Ward 1. The good thing is we were talking about a 5-year plan. If we could get to that, you know, maybe what we see on the screen would be year 2. Well, that would be year 1 being 2024. There's a couple of those that did not get done, or maybe more than a couple. And this would be year 2 with possibly 3, 4, 5 more years down the road. If you look at some of our partners out there, whether it be St. Louis County, MoDOT, they essentially work on about a 10-year plan. It's very simple for MoDOT because they know that this road has to be replaced essentially at this time, or they're going to be doing what we're doing now, where we're just chasing potholes. They're lucky because they have some spatial taxes and some other things that keep their pockets with some money in them. But we don't have that plan currently. So like I said, in the future, this could be year 2, followed by year 3, year 4, year 5. So whenever an alder does get a phone call, you say, oh yeah, that's going to be paved in 2027. But we currently do not have that. The other thing, which we're going to see here on a few more slides, is ward boundaries are a pain. So if you have, let's say, Kings Highway from point A to point B, and you want to pave Kings Highway from point A to point B as an alder, that is great. But if the alder north or south of you does not, that means we're stopping at that ward boundary. When the paving is actually based on alder's money, which once again, I think is why we need to get to the point where we have essentially our own money to put into an extensive paving program that would essentially tell us exactly when we need to pave streets. Ward 2, as you can see, there's nothing shows there. Just off the top of my head too, this is another problem. We know utility companies are working pretty much everywhere in South City currently. They were all in North City for about the last 10 years, Spire specifically. So a lot of the proposals that are on this list may not be able to be paved for a year or 2 anyway, based on when that utility company is going to be completed with that work. So Ward 3, you see another one. You know, this is in Dolores. You'll see Dolores on a lot of these slides because it does cross multiple wards, and luckily the alders essentially said we want Dolores paved, and across that, I think 3 different wards, at least where our paving is, and they all agreed with that, which is awesome, but that doesn't always happen. Also, sometimes a ward boundary splits a street right down the middle. So we're going to pave the east side of the street and not the west side because the alderman or alder on the west side doesn't want to participate in paving. So that's just another issue we see all the time. And these are the ones in Ward 3 that were not selected. And you'll see more and more of this. Like I said, it's kind of beating a dead horse the further I get through this, But here's Ward 4, where the entire list was, where everything that was proposed was funded. You have a little hold here in Columbia. There should also be a hold on TAM, which doesn't show up on here because of construction there too. But the yellow for these are a hold for construction, and I believe this next list. So yeah, so that is the recommendations, and as you see on the bottom, he accepted all the recommendations and funded all the recommendations. Ward 5, you see the top 3 are holds for Spire. The middle 4 were completed, and the bottom was also completed. That Magnolia was also a split ward where both wards 5 and 6 agreed. And that was a pretty large paving job at the end of the day. It was the north side of Tower Grove Park from end to end. We'll go back to 5 here. As you can see here, this goes back to what we seen earlier. You know, you got 3, 4, like almost $1 million, if not a full $1 million in paving there. And you have the same thing there. So I don't personally expect, knowing how much alders get for their funding, for them to spend every penny, nickel, and dime on it. But as you guys have heard, in my opinion, and it's almost fact, is that if we're not spending $12.5 million a year on paving, we're shooting ourselves in the foot. You know, you don't buy a car knowing that the oil needs to be changed every 3,000 to 5,000 miles and wait till 20,000 miles, which is exactly what we're doing, what we've been doing for over a decade now. Between 2020 to 2023, the city paved approximately 25,000 tons, which, and in this 2024, we paved right at 75 or 80,000 tons of asphalt. That number should be much closer to 200,000 tons per year in order to be paving stuff in its useful life. And there's engineers out at University of Missouri, all over the place. University of Missouri is a very big one that has asphalt studies, and they know that this type of street lasts this long in our climate. And like I said, we've probably 1/8 of the pavement that we should be doing. And $12 million, $12.5 million in the budget we have towards infrastructure seems pretty easy to figure out to me. So Ward 6, the top one that's a special project. That's the Tower Grove connector, so it's on hold. You can see once again, there are, the comp is also the same thing. That's another special project that's gonna have bump outs and some crosswalks on it, so it's also on hold. But you also see, again, that, you know, there's, not sure what the total is here, but close to $1 million in paving, especially if you add in Tower Grove and Compton. Ward 6. So this is Ward 6 extra that wasn't funded in FY25 or calendar year 24. Also substantial, but there's almost $1 million put into actual paving. Ward 7. Ward 7 was pretty unlucky. As you can see, that most everything that was chosen in Ward 7 is on a hold because Spire was currently working there. And it's still on hold, and hopefully this spring / summer we'll get there. I have to look at our actual schedule to verify that. And those are ones that were not chosen. 8, similar thing to what we've been seeing. This is a little less, but it's a little less. This list is weird because there are a bunch of alleys that were chosen in Ward 8, which probably are not on here. Yeah, so there's probably 20-ish alleys that are in Ward 8. So yeah, so you see what was chosen there, which dollar amount wise looks like 400,000 ballpark. But there's an additional probably 20 plus alleys to go along with that because the alleys in that ward, unlike many other wards in the city, were never paved. Those are leftovers from Ward 8. Ward 9, kind of the same thing. We actually just traded an email earlier that part of this list was completed, part of it was not. The parts that were not were either construction hold or, like you see on the bottom there, hold for BPS because they had some work to do there. And then there's also substantial list of what wasn't picked. Like I said, though, in the real world, this would be year 2 or year 3, and you'd have all this planned so you can keep moving forward. Ward 10, we did not have a whole lot of lists for Ward 10, and we went out looking, and these were mostly the residentials we found that could be completed in Ward 10. There's some major streets, but the major streets, you know, you're talking $30,000 to $50,000 a block when you start talking about these very large wide streets. And so there's a lot of wide streets in Ward 10 that do need a little help, but those with the alder's budget are very hard to program in the way our system currently is. And also Ward 10 completed everything that was on her list that was recommended. Ward 11, kind of the same thing we've seen. Once again, another $1 million in paving. And I will say 2024 calendar year is the biggest paving year we've had probably in about 10 years. And it's 3 times what we paved in 2020, 2021, 2022, or 2023. Any of those previous 4 years, it was right at 3 times what we paved compared to those years. As you can see, Lindell Olive, just from Jefferson to Vanaventer, that's 2/3 of $1 million almost. That's a lot of money out of ward capital. Then you get Ward 11. There were no chosen streets. Ward 12, same. 13 is pretty minimal. There were some requests for 13. Oh, there we are. And they were just kind of up in the air in 13, and no decisions were ever finalized on what we were going to pave in 13. But a lot of discussions were had there. And 14 has a pretty small list, $100,000, and probably $1.5 million in unselected streets. But like I said, those lists kind of come together currently based on essentially squeaky wheel. If a neighborhood complains, then they send it to the alder sends it to us, we give them a price, it gets on the list as a proposal. And then it's up to the alder at some point to either decide they want to pave that or they do not want to pave that. And I think that is it for me, and I will turn it over to Zach.
Hey, Madam Chair, how are you?
Hi, Zach. Thanks for being here. Just introduce yourself and appreciate you being here, and go ahead with your presentation.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Zach Fortune, and I'm the program manager for the St. Louis Street Department. I'm here to just give you a brief overview of the 50/50 sidewalk program, somewhat a little bit of the past, present, and the future. We're going to start off with the ARPA funded part of this program. Back in, I believe it was 2022, we were, thank you, allocated $6,150,000 to alleviate the backlog of the city sidewalk requests. And we worked off the old 28 ward model. So the time period is from 2023 till present. We were able to award 5 contracts. And we also purchased 1 concrete truck to replace our outdated one. To date, the scope of work completed, we completed 842 service requests. We've replaced 234,000 square feet of sidewalk and almost 2,000 linear feet of curb. We're currently, I believe we've completed around 21 wards out of the 28 ward system. So we have 7 left to go, and we should have that completed by the end of July. So contracts awarded. Well, I'll give you a little backdate on that. So with that 6 million, we split that up between 28 wards at about 215,000 per ward. And of course, it was hard to get right at that number. Some wards we went over, maybe 230, 240. And some wards we were under just because we were going off the scope of work that was in those 28 wards. So it's not evenly across all 28, but we did our best to do that. So currently, right now, we have we have 2 contractors that are closing up for the ARPA funded money. And like I said, there's about 7 wards to go. We'll have that wrapped up by the end of July. And then we're going to start moving forward on our fiscal year 2025 contracts. And just to give you a little update on that, or a little backstory on that, every year before ward capital meetings, I'll submit a list of addresses to the aldermen and a dollar amount with that. And at ward capital meetings, they will provide funding for that, or they will not provide funding for that. Last May was a little different. Since we were going to the merging from 28 to 14, I wasn't ready to provide a list. So I didn't send my list out to the alderpersons until May 31st. And then gradually the alderpersons started allocating funds. So I was able to start the process of contracts in September. And after we had 4 contracts total, we'll have notice to proceeds to send out in about 3 weeks on 3 or 4 of those contracts. And it'll be about 5 to 6 weeks for the 4th contract for that notice to proceed. Okay, so again, on these contracts for fiscal year 2025, with the 4 contracts that we have, and this is something that it's always been an issue with the sidewalk program, is once we submit these out for bid, that's a 5-week solicitation process. And then it's another 3 months to go through the BPS process for approval, to go for bonding, the NBE, WBE process, which really, it hinders us from getting a lot more work done. Okay, that's pretty much all I have, really. I mean, come this year, I will provide another list. BPS usually starts in April, sends us out an email telling us to get ready, provide information to the alders. And again, I'll submit a large list to you guys asking you for all your money. And when we sit down in May, you guys will provide what you can provide, and we'll start the process again, putting those into contracts and keep the work flowing. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over back to my boss, Bethany, and answer any questions that you guys may have. Thank you.
Alrighty, so as we continue, And Madam Chair, if you want to wait until the end for questions, we have just a couple more slides here.
Thank you. We'll wait till the end for questions. That's perfect.
Oh, okay, cool. So next we want to talk about the moratorium for utility work in areas where we've already paved. So this was hard for us to identify where we have paved. How do we communicate with utility companies and hold them accountable to say, you know, did you know, did you not know that we were paving in these areas? As you can see in the examples of the paving list that Commissioner Flake shared with you today, it shows where we're communicating. Well, we've had some level of communication with utility companies, and that's what causes us to hold or to push out when we do the paving work. Not to say it's removed from the list, it's on hold because we know that work is coming on some of these streets that pavement has been requested. So what we've said, effective 2025, any paving that we do in 2025 and a paving list for 2025, moving forward is where we will set the moratorium, which means you will not be able to, unless it's an emergency, it's a new build, things of that nature, those will be the reasons why we will grant you permits to do work in these areas. So as we are paving in 2025, that is where we're looking to say, set the moratorium to say, if it's not an emergency, then you will not be able to pave in these areas. Responsibilities of repairs. So it's important that we know in the past, over the years, through the pandemic, out of the pandemic, before we went into the pandemic, guidelines, staffing issues, all of these things could have changed how we made a contractor or a utility company responsible for the replacement work and to repair what they have torn up through excavation permit. We are working with BPS to update our ordinance or to update our specs, as well as per the ordinance, it says that, you know, we have to adopt St. Louis County's specifications. So we are in the process of working on that. But we want to make sure that these are main things that utility companies know. We're setting an expectation that we're wanting all steel plates to be asphalt ramped down, as well as they are now responsible for filling the cut to meet the standard specifications for any utility cuts that we have, meaning that they're also responsible for the asphalt work. So when we look at the standards, I kind of spoke of that a little earlier. The ordinance requires that we adopt St. Louis County's standards. We are working with the Board of Public Service and the engineers. As we all know, our engineers are housed in, or I shouldn't say our engineers because I am one, but our certified engineers that carry a seal, they are all housed in the Board of Public Service. And so we are working with the Board of Public Service that writes all of our specifications as it pertains to the engineers in that department to make sure that we meet the requirements, and we're comparing them to St. Louis County to identify what needs to be changed in that process. The fees and permitting. One thing we did want to point out that the ordinance currently changes the fees. It changes it from $2,000, which what it was before, now to $1,500. So I wanted to point that out, that we know that this change is here. The thought process of making this change, because now we're pulling the number of permits that we currently have out. Some of our utility companies, we work, you know, a number of permits or projects or maybe under one permit. So we are working with our utility companies to identify when is the best time for us to change to this $1,500 charge for permit fees. So just wanted to point it out that it is a decrease of $500 per the ordinance. And the last section that we have here pretty much just speaks to legal responsibilities and things of that nature. And we are working with that when we look at our penalties, when we are looking at who does this work, who's going to be tracking and identifying the violations. We've identified that we know we have 7 inspectors on staff, and we currently have 7 vacancies with a live active rec to fill those vacancies to get more inspectors in. But it will be the duty of the inspectors. At the top of this PowerPoint, I spoke to training, making sure they are aware, updating our checklist that we have. In preparing for today and just looking at this ordinance and how we roll it out, we've identified a checklist that was used for this years ago. The paper is literally turning colors. That's how old it is. But that gives us a place, a starting place. And we're just bringing the checklist to the 21st century, as well as looking at St. Louis County specs. And then we will move forward with BPS with recommendations for approval of the specification on how we look at violations, as well as our expectations when gaining access to excavation permits, and what do we expect to be completed at the end of the day when you're done with that work. At this time, I will turn it over for questions. I'm sure we have questions. I'm going to stop sharing so that we can see more of a full screen of everyone that is here, and then we will be able to take questions from there.
Thank you, Director Williams, and thank you to also Commissioner Flake and Mr. Fortune for presenting as well. Really appreciate all of your time this afternoon. We'll move through the committee with questions in order of seniority. Alderman Balmer.
Sorry, I had to unmute. I haven't touched it in a while. How are we doing there today?
Hello, how are you doing?
Things, as we spoke many, many times, getting the paving out of our hands and into people who aren't asking for votes hands to make sure that things get done on a structural and administrative basis as opposed to a political basis. Where, as Kent stated, and you have that, we're behind schedule. And it's time to, as I leave here, hopefully this will all turn over and go that way, so that, especially now that you have some larger wards with less aldermen where they're not able to see everything on a daily basis like we used to. It was a much more intimate situation when you had one alderman with of 28. You maybe knew your ward a little more, but all of a sudden it's larger and you can't get things done the proper way. So yes, this is hopefully will work out, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Yes, that's our goal. As I started, we're trying to identify, we've put it in our budget, a paving line item for the last 2 years. We've done the work here in the department to identify what will this look like. As Commissioner Flake said, it's a dollar amount that we just need to figure out how do we budget for that so that we can plan more accordingly and efficient and effectively for the city of St. Louis.
Alderwoman Keys.
Thank you all. Just great information, and I thank you all for the presentation and providing all of the insight into, what these endeavors are going to take. So I don't have any questions at this time. I'm actually here at the funeral for former Sheriff Murphy, so I'm going to get ready to get back in line.
Thank you, Alderman. Alderman Velasquez.
Thank you, Chairwoman Schweitzer, and thank you, street staff, for being here. I do just want to say you all are excellent when I respond to emails. especially Zach with the 50/50 sidewalk program, and he never fails to be able to answer specifically when somebody's on the list. So I very much appreciate that. I think I might have just sent you one today or this morning. I don't have a specific question for the as it goes towards utility coordination, but Commissioner Flake, since we have you here, is there, and we can obviously talk about it more too, but is there a way that at least for like the next 2 years, for example, for me, that I know you've got my list of streets that are unpaved, and I've got some constituents who want those streets to be paved, but can we at least come up with a I mean, obviously a 5-year plan would probably be better, but even like a 2-year plan, is that something that we can work on, uh, that we can work on as alders with the department to try and at least make it make a little bit more sense in this system?
No, I think that's absolutely correct. I mean, overall, we need to be looking at this very strategically. It's been, like I said, we know how it is. It's squeaky wheel and voters, not voters, what have you. I think it's fairly simple. It's a little harder now that we have bigger wards to come up with an idea of what's really important. But I mean, it really, like I said, this is way more in a science than it is anything else. We can look at a street, we know what kind of condition it's in. And the goal in the future would be able to, overlay that with the population, overlay that with some traffic counts, overlay that with the important things, whatever we decide as a city is important. And the computer at the end of the day is going to spit out what we need to be paving and what order we need to be paving it in. And I think on a small scale, a ward is, if someone has that interest, and they actually want to have that interest, because some alders say they have that interest, and by the time I do the legwork, then we don't pave anything for the next 3 years. I want to avoid that, but I don't think it's an issue at all to come up with a 2-3 year plan and get something strategically figured out, at least in the short term, that actually makes sense and takes some of the politics and some of the other issues out of this. Because yeah, it's nice to get the squeaky wheel to be quiet, but as soon as you oil that one, you get 5 more right behind it. So
Yes, we just got some. So thank you for putting some speed humps. Well, I know it was BPS in my ward, and now I've had subsequent squeaky wheels about things not getting paved but getting speed humps. Final question, and I do just want to say for the record, I do agree with Alderman Vollmer. The more you can get me out of it, I would prefer it, because I'm not an engineer and I don't want to be, much to my dad's disappointment in life. But do you have a software, like a system, it sounds like, where all this, you just said a computer kind of spits all this stuff out? It sounds like we have something like that. And is that available to us, or is there a way to get sort of a map of our wards or even the city and kind of the conditions that, the program spits out of like what our roads are?
Got you. So I will let Kent talk about what we currently utilize and the system that we identify that we use to give you what we do give you, what we are able to provide to you. But just in that request, the streets department for the last 2 budget cycles we have continuously tried to be proactive. Submit a budget that will allow us to be in a more proactive space. And that will allow for asset management. And these are one of the tools that we will be able to purchase software that will spit us out a 5, 10, 15-year plan, as well as evaluate our pavements in our neighborhoods, as well as our arterial streets. And so it will help us in that. So those are one of the things that if you look at our budget requests, those are all wrapped into how do we improve asset management. And I know today we're just talking about streets and paving and sidewalks, but this will give us more accountability and know exactly what we have with every asset that we manage as a streets department. if we had the software and the ability to make those changes. So I will let Kent talk about what we currently use until we're able to get some fancy software to help us be more proactive.
And just a quick question, Director Williams, is that
Mhm.
request, are you planning that software request in the upcoming budget
Yes.
cycle? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, so currently we use a Lovely Access database, which is just a giant spreadsheet for people who don't know what Access databases are. It's a giant spreadsheet that's much more searchable than a regular spreadsheet. So that's how we store our data now. It's been about 10 years since we updated that data. Essentially because every time 10 years ago I put a report together, nobody wanted to pave anything on it. So eventually I just got tired of keeping it updated.
I'm going to be on the record that after we talk, we're going to do 2 to 3 year request. I'm going to say that so it's on there now. And you can pick the streets and then I can tell them that you were the squeaky wheel and that's how we made the decision. No, I'm kidding.
I appreciate that. And to go over the GIS stuff, we've actually, this isn't new. We've been hearing GIS for at least a good solid 10 years now in normal conversations. So ITSA does have this set up where essentially all we have to do, to make this real simple too, our street ratings are 1 through 10. 1's a dirt road, 10 was paved yesterday. And it's very subjective, very subjective. I'm going to look at something, you're going to look at something, we're all going to see something. I'm going to say I'm optimistic, so I'm going to say it's an 8. You're more pessimistic, so you're going to say it's a 5, whatever. So it's kind of hard to do, but it's very subjective. But it's very easy. There's a manual called the PASER manual, PASER. If anybody would like to look it up, I know a couple times on chat, I've seen that actually on these aldermanic meetings. Somebody recommended we use that. It's good because we do, or at least we did. So it's already set up to take these numbers, these numeric numbers of 1 through 10. I know that the city's GIS system has population densities, the big glowing circles we see on some of these maps that the city produces. Like I said earlier, traffic counts would be good, but we don't have a whole lot of traffic counts. And that's just another added expense to get those in there too. But the ones we do have, we can put those in there. And the current system will take all that. The biggest thing is having someone who can actually, we paved the street today, and actually put that in there, or something happened, a water main break happened on this street. So it was a great street that was just paved last year and it took it down significantly, but it's keeping that information updated, and continually every 2-3 years, at least if you use this method, as far as just visually observing roads and give them a 1 through 10, every 2, 3, 4 years, you just need to run through, because we don't always know when there's an MSD issue. We don't always know when there's a water break. We don't always know all of this. And some of those, you can have a pretty good street that overnight can turn into a pretty bad street. And if that information is not forwarded to us in one way, shape, or form, that map would never know that. The data would never know that. So that's why we do need the GIS person in order to keep that updated, in order to be able, even if you didn't award a month or half award a month, just to run through and make sure, and they may not change anything. Because like my database, every year, it automatically took street evaluations down a 1/4 point, depending on what size street it was, on how much it actually took it down. But we know a major street should only last for 8 years. So every year it goes down 1/8 of its original score. So if it was a 10, then next year it's going to be an 8.5 or something like that. 8.75. My math is better than that. But yeah, it's somebody to keep that updated. And, every once in a while we add a street, every once in a while we vacate a street. And that all needs to be in there so we can keep an actual good inventory of what we own and what condition it's in.
And then final question, to kind of loop it back to all the utility coordination. I mean, I assume that if we do get this software, the utility companies can, I guess, provide like a shape file or a GIF file of what they're, you can overlay that. And that's what we don't have the ability right now to do because everything is in a old fangled spreadsheet, but we need if you had the GIS software, the utility companies could, it'd be easier to see, but you could provide, you could get
Yes.
that data.
Yes, so that's the part of the request that we're asking, like when they give us their annual plans, it will be in a format that we will be able to go in and map it and overlap it with our utility plan that we currently have, or that we would have or be able to develop as a city.
And you would need that transition plan, or obviously you need to transition all that data from the Access database to the GIS software. And that's why you.
Yes, and did you say when the last time we updated?
2014.
Okay, so 2014 was the last year that we updated that database that we're speaking of,
And this
that
is the
we currently have.
And I assume the asset management software can also like provide, I mean, I like weather events and things like that. It just sort of I mean, I guess that's some of the calculations it provides on like just wear and tear and maybe more weather updates and whatnot that affect the conditions of the roads.
So I don't know about day-to-day weather conditions, but it will be able to evaluate, as Kent was saying, someone in this position will be able to go out on a ward by ward basis and just lay eyes on the pavement. You know, we know in some cases, or some of us may know, just because you apply the same asphalt everywhere, it may take different. The truck traffic may be different. The ridership may be different. The speed limits may be different, which causes more breakdowns of the pavement. And so we still will have to do legwork on our end to make sure we're able to keep the data updated in the asset management system, but we will have a starting point, and then we will be able to be more proactive in our planning endeavors.
Great. Well, that's all the questions I have. Thank you, Director Williams and Commissioner Flake and Commissioner Fortune, and Madam Chair, I pass the baton
Oh,
back.
she made you a commissioner. You like
Oh.
that?
We all are thinking it. Thank you, Alderwoman. Vice Chair Browning.
Thank you. And thank you all who have come today and to share with us. It's really helpful to get this information and also helpful for the public to be able to see it. So we really appreciate that. And Director Williams, I especially appreciate you getting back to work after you've been going through some personal stuff. So I know it's always tough to get back on your feet, but the city is definitely appreciative. I think we can all agree from what we've heard that the current way we pave things is not ideal. I think we've heard it from the alderman on this call, and I think it was a big part of people desiring a new way of doing this. I also think it's impossible to properly administer the utility coordination plan without having a paving plan, that we really cannot expect the utility companies to know if they're going to dig up something that we just paved unless they know what we are going to pave. So working towards that has got to be our goal. On that note, you said in the last 2 years that you've requested a paving item in the budget. It wasn't funded last year. Is there any hope that it might get funded even a little bit this year?
It is our hope. You know, we had our first round of budget meetings with the budget division. We stressed the importance of, putting these funds into, allotting these funds to the streets department so that we can start some of the paving work that we're doing. But in the meantime, we know that we have ARPA dollars. And I think that was a major not just where we could see actual paving being done, but we were able to utilize those funds so that we can gain the knowledge base of what will it look like to totally repave some of our major arterials, as well as look at how do we enhance safety features of some of these roads as well. And so it's more of a complex thought process in how we selected those major arterials to do the paving. But yes, it is something that we understand the breakdown is how we currently identify paving as well as the funding, and we will continue to ask for it until we are successful and get additional funding for paving.
Well, and I'm glad you mentioned the ARPA funds because I did have a question about that as well. The Kings Highway got repaved, North Kings Highway got repaved last year, but I saw a news item that it's going to get paved again. And I had driven it recently and also noticed that some of the fresh paving work had been undone by, I'm not sure which utility, but it was around manhole covers in the middle of the road. So, it was obviously pretty disappointing to see the utility company come up and wreck a road that we just paid a lot of money to repave, and also that they had well advanced warnings that we were going to pave. But I'm wondering what happened with Kings Highway and the ARPA dollars that it needed to be repaved.
So it was towards the end of the season. I think a lot of factors went into paving that major arterial. Not to take anything away from the streets department and the work that they did, our paving crew, but it was a bit much. You had live traffic moving on both sides. So not only do I have to pay attention to what I'm paving, I also have to pay attention to all of this traffic that's going on around me. We had a major breakdown of equipment. One of our, what was that, the miller? The miller burnt up, caught fire and burned up while we were paving in this area. We just had a lot of things that happened. The repaving that you're seeing are some of the worst areas where we saw some of the joints were in the wheel path. We saw it just was not, it wasn't draining properly. Things of that nature is the reason why you're seeing repaving. But a large amount of that work that was done on Kings Highway is not getting repaved. But what is getting repaved is because we saw that it needed to be improved in those areas. And so that's the work that you're seeing. I'm not for sure. I know that the utility or the contractor that we have that is out doing paving work now, they're doing some cuts around manholes. So I'm not for sure if that's the work that you're seeing as they're milling to do the repaving, or if it's something additional that we'd have to look into to figure out what is that you're speaking of. But I do know that they are doing some milling work around some of the manholes on Kings Highway.
Okay, all right, that might just be fixing something then. The article I found it was a Fox 2 article, said that last year we paved it for about $500,000. It concludes that though the work being done now will be an additional $1.2 million. Is that accurate, and why the price difference?
So this is contract work now. So where before we were doing the work in-house, and as I stated before, my last statement, that was a bit much for the streets department. When we're doing the paving, you're pretty much just paying for the material. Where when you hire a contractor, you're paying for their equipment, their time, their labor, all of that. And so that could be, and I'm sure that is the difference in the cost that you're seeing there versus what it would have been just for us to do it, because you're only covering the material when we're doing the asphalt work.
Gotcha. So really, I mean, we pay for the labor and the equipment too at the city. It's just not factored into that cost when we're
correct. That comes out of the streets department regular general fund budget or our budget items that we have for paving.
Okay, that's helpful. So somewhat related, last year I was in my board capital meeting, which I'll also note I think happens too late in the year because it's like paving season is halfway over by the time we really get down and start talking about how to budget our board capital. So it's also why it's not an ideal system for a funding source for paving streets, because it just doesn't happen until we've already lost half the year of when work can be done. But when we sat down, I was essentially told pick 5 streets and we can try to get to them this year. Of the 5 streets that I picked, only 2 of them got paved. My understanding is that some other wards didn't see any get paved. And we were and I understand if the main corridors, the arterials are being taken care of, that might have been something and a reason why. But you're saying that that is contract work now. So going forward, are we expecting that the equipment and the personnel of the streets department will be ready to do and available to do those other streets this year?
So the plan of action is we have hired a contractor to do the arterial work that is outlined in the ARPA contract. Outside of that, it is my hope that the streets department can totally focus on residential streets. We do that well. We see very few errors when we're doing our equipment, can operate our staff. The mix that we use, all of those different types of things work really well for us on residential streets. At no given point do I want to take away what we're good at or what we, you know, with additional training, we can be very, very good at it. So I want to make sure that residential streets are our top priority. But what we will do is we continue on the list as alders identify streets that they're wanting to be paved, it's just added to the list. And then we communicate internally with utility companies, Spire, Ameren, different companies to see what utility work they have going. From there, that is how we identify how we pave on the list. I do know that we still have some streets left over that were funded from last paving season, because really that list is more of on a calendar year instead of a fiscal year basis. So as alders call us, more are added to the list, but they're added to the bottom of the list. So it is our hope that we will be able to get to more of those residential streets that have been outlined. I cannot sit here and say that all of the arterial streets that are outlined in some of your ward capital meetings will be paved by a contractor. I just know that the 5 major arterials that we have, I work with BPS to get a contractor to do that work. But moving forward, that will be my hope and my plan, but understanding that it will take us more money to hire a contractor to do that work.
Gotcha. Okay. And, you know, that's another reason why I think it's important that we have the department fully staffed and fully funded with the right policies in place so that we can do this work ourselves, because the city saves money when we do that. So I'm just glad that people can hear that, because, you know, I hear that all the time. Why don't we just hire some contractors? Well, because it's not the best use of money sometimes. And there's also a limited number of contractors available to do that kind of work.
Exactly. Go ahead.
Oh, no, please.
No, I was just going to say, I think that, you know, as we have more and more of these discussions, as I talk internally with the staff, as I do research across the country, the problem that we have is the funding, and it's not in the control of the streets department in order for us to be more proactive in how we select and how we do the paving in the city of St. Louis. So I totally believe that the funding needs to be available. I think that, and it allows us to be more proactive in our planning and how we do business as it pertains to paving. Really more than just paving, but I'll start with paving.
I think we must be on the same wavelength today, because that leads into my last question, which is that when we have a set number of streets in the city, that doesn't really change, right? We're not creating new roads anymore. The city is built out. It is constricted by boundaries. I understand that from year to year, the conditions might change because, say, water main break could, you know, ruin a freshly paved road or something like that. But certainly making sure that we understand the condition of our pavement, and so that's not subjective, and that we are, you know, grading it and then prioritizing it based off of what needs it. And measuring other factors too, like how well traveled is this road? Is this a major arterial that, we need to make sure is in good shape because it sees 10,000 cars a day, or do we need to make sure that, that thing that was just torn up by Spire needs to get done when previously it didn't need to get done. There's a lot of things that will change in that list, but having that list to be able to edit it, and not only that, but have the public be able to have some transparency too. And the utility companies have some transparency in seeing what might happen next, would be go a long way to, I think, just to people feeling like the city is responsive to their needs and that we're not, shooting ourselves in the foot when we tear up something we just did. On that note, the utility coordination bill went into effect towards the end of January. Going through that bill, I think we put it together with a lot of intentionality to make sure that we were doing the best standard when it came to patching work that had been done. And what we've noticed is that concrete patches tend to move around after a couple winters because concrete and asphalt have, as my understanding is, they have different freezing temperatures. And so they kind of move around and then cause our really uneven streets. We also see degradation around the patch when a concrete patch is made, where the asphalt starts to fall apart around that concrete patch. In the bill, the standard became that the utility company is supposed to fill it, I think, below grade up with concrete and then top it off with asphalt so that the asphalt surface is continuous. There's been repairs in the city that I've seen since then, though, that are not following that standard. Is that a matter of not having inspectors to go out and make sure that the job is being done right? Or is this something that we can help with by reporting it? And if so, how can we do that? How can we help make sure that the streets are being repaired to the standard they should be?
So for one, couple things. So you're correct. It will be the responsibility of the inspectors. At the top of the PowerPoint where I talked about training of our inspectors, updating the inspection checklist. These are things that we're working through. How do we get through this to provide this information to the contractors? As well as we have put in the letter that when we outline some of the highlights, really the whole ordinance is important, but things that we really want them to focus on, some of the things is effective immediately, of which one is what you're speaking of, how they complete the cuts. It's no longer going to be that you can concrete up to grade, because like you say, it moves, it shifts. Some of these patches, it's with the expectation or the thought process or the intention that the streets department will come back and be doing some paving work in this area, or the contractor has paid us to do this asphalt work, and we just never get around to it. So there's a number of things and reasons why we see some of the excavations and the repairs the way that they are in the city, and not to throw blame on anyone, but with this effective immediately, that is what our expectation is. And our inspectors will be going out, they will be doing these inspections. I have asked for a robust list of all of the permits that we've issued, so we know exactly what is here per contractor, where they are, the locations where they are, so that our inspectors can make this part of their rotations, and they will be able to inspect this to see what is being done. Another major priority is the placement of asphalt around the steel plates. That's something that almost has to be done on a daily basis. So making sure that these contractors have that, and if they're not complying with this, the ordinance speaks to penalties. It speaks to, if you continue this practice, your subcontractor or your utility company will no longer be able to do business in the city of St. Louis. So these are major, major points that we've made sure we've outlined to the utility companies. And that's starting at the head, because if I'm a contractor, I'm only contracted to do work for this utility company. So we've shared this information with the utility companies as well as our inspectors on how and what they should be looking for when they're doing these inspections in the field. But I hear your point to, is it a way that you all can feed us that information? We can look to see if it's a drop down that could be added to CSB. We have not gotten that far in the process. We were just trying to look internally of how we can identify with the staff that we currently have.
Okay, well, thank you. I really appreciate that. I really do believe that we can get to a point where we get the funding necessary to the department so that they can really take ownership of our streets and make sure we're doing this in the most efficient and really equitable way too. I want to focus on, the equity piece for just a second, because it's, I noticed that the Northern wards had these huge lists, and like it's impossible for them to fund that out of ward capital when they're getting the same amount as more compact wards down south or in the central part of our city. So I want to make sure that everyone's roads are in good condition. I want to make sure that we're doing this in an efficient way. And part of that is going to be getting that money so that a paving plan can be created. And that really will be the future for our city. I think when we talk about capital needs of our city, if our streets aren't able to be in good condition, we're not taking care of the basic things. And that goes for sidewalks too. I want to, especially shout out Zach and the good work that they've done. We've seen all sorts of good sidewalk work being done recently, and I know the residents are very appreciative. So I'm very optimistic that we can get to that point. I have to run to another meeting, so I'm going to have to hop off this call. But again, thank you all for your time today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alderman. So I want to try to be respectful of everyone's time on staff and try to wrap up by 5 p.m. So I'll just be really quick with all of my questions. Just a few points. One, I know Alderman Browning made a comment about how some of the pieces of this bill kind of require a plan. I'd say that's true in some pieces, and in other places it's not true. What is required of the utility company is laid out piece by piece, depending on the size of the cut. That has nothing to do with whether a street has planned paving or not. So I always want to make sure that we're not just saying that, this part's not possible or something like that, because that's just not the case. I do also want to say that the deposit amount that you referenced, Director Williams, is staying at $1,500. It was $1,500 before. It's $1,500 now. We didn't change any fees that were collected by the streets department in the bill. We actually wanted to make it $2,000, which was similar to what Olivet does for their permit, for their deposits that they have. But we decided, just out of keeping things standard, that we'd keep it with what the streets department had as what they had listed as their deposit on the streets department website for these sorts of utility cuts. So I'll just make sure those things are said out loud. One of the things we also made sure to have in the bill is that the utilities provide their plans in January, but when the bills is staggered is that the streets department provides its paving list July 1st. So that then utility companies are supposed to be following what the streets department is doing, so that they know what's going to be paved coming up. So they're able to create their plans when they provide them in January to be following the streets department, so that they're not planning to be paving or to be doing work in roads that were on the paving list, or in contrast, if they are on the list, that they have the incentive to get that work done earlier, so that they have to do less work when they're doing work on the streets, so that it's less expensive for them to comply with this. One of the things I noticed on the permit that you sent is that the permit that you sent, and maybe this isn't an updated version, still says the streets department comes back and fills the last 2 inches. It doesn't actually say that the utility provider is responsible. So in the bill that we provided, we created an updated permit example that does lay out what the utility provider would do for. So after maybe tomorrow, we can go through and make sure the permit that's going out actually matches language wise for what the bill is supposed to have in it. One of the things that about the paving plan, the paving budget, that I remember Director Payne saying in the past is the reason it wasn't funded is that it wasn't tied to actual projects. So this year, when you asked for a paving budget, did you give them all of the streets that you'd like to have paved going in the next year?
So Director Payne hasn't shared that level of detail with us that we needed to provide projects to match the funding. We outlined and we talked about with him generally, and I think even in our meeting we had at the end of last month, he has general questions that he asked us about the pavement. What is the percentage of the streets that this will cover? But we've never been asked to identify projects that will be associated with that. And Kent can speak more to how he gets to the total numbers that we're presented, but that's just really looking at all of our streets, our roads in the city of St. Louis, dividing it by the factors of the traffic volumes, and then putting it over, I think you divide it by what, is it 3 or 5?
Depends on the useful life. So
Yeah.
it's total amount divided by MoDOT's anticipated useful life.
So yes, so we take into account and consideration the useful life, and that's how we came up with the number that was given to Paul Payne that should be given on an annual basis. And so we know that we would not be able to facilitate all the needs. And right now it's impossible for us to provide him with the project list unless we provide him a list based off of what we give to the alders in the ward capital meetings. But then you don't know from that what will be selected. This was more holistic, looking at the entire city, looking at what will it cost us on an annual basis to pave a certain quantity based on the life expectancy of our different types of roads. And when I say different types of roads, that's your major thoroughfares, your residential streets, and I don't even know if we calculated the alleys, but that will be an even lower priority than those top two.
Okay, I appreciate that. I think it kind of gives me some follow-up to do for, what the budget request was and what that looks like for what you anticipate being able to get done, if that's on the list now. It obviously makes it a lot easier to put together a 5-year plan if you have an idea of every year what you're going to get for paving, whether that's anticipated ward capital and amount in the budget, which I think makes sense. And there's a lot of aldermen, I think, who are interested in having a portion of the ward capital always going to paving. And so that you all know how much is coming every year guaranteed. So there's some sort of baseline that can be done going forward. I want to echo the ask by Alderman Browning and your suggestion, Director Williams, to have a Citizen Service Bureau link that is for a utility cut, and when it's done, improperly, that there is some way for residents to report that, or if if there's no asphalt ramping, for example. I think that was most of my questions were asked by other aldermen, and I know we're getting close to time. Madam Clerk, you said we don't have anyone waiting to give public comments?
No, we do not.
Okay. Well, I think there's some conversations to have offline about paving budgets and things like that. And making sure the permit is updated. The other piece that we had in the ordinance was a descriptive document that exists in the streets department that has to do with what the expectations are. And I saw a little bit of that in the permit, but we provided, what Olivet gives to utility providers. And I know we've talked about this in the utility meetings. How is that coming along in terms of creating a document like that for the city of St. Louis?
So like I stated, we are working with the engineers from the Board of Public Service. We have identified an old checklist that we've used in the past. And so we are in the process of comparing what we currently have, what Olivet has, and how do we merge it and then provide pictures. Same layout will be there, but we just have to make sure that whatever changes to the specification has been approved by working with the engineers at the Board of BPS, and then approved by the Board of Public Services as a whole. And we're in the process of working on that.
Okay, thank you very much for that information. I look forward to more updates, and I just want to thank you again for taking the time to give us a presentation and for weaving in both the paving plan and sidewalk presentation update as well. While this was intended to be mostly on the enforcement and how it's going to get the utility policy off the ground, obviously all of these things, go together and are important to think about at the same time. So with that, I'm hoping Alderwoman Keys is still with us and can pop back on for a moment. Alderman Keys. Well, I believe all members were present during today's hearing. Alderwoman Keys, if you don't mind, I will ask you to make a motion to adjourn, and then I will second it and have a call for previous roll, just so we can appropriately adjourn the meeting.
Sounds wonderful. I move that we adjourn the meeting.
I second, and previous roll. Thank you all for coming. We are adjourned.
Have a great day.
Thank you.